we went to the concert, and it was amazing, and about halfway through, I had a feeling come over me that I recognized from 3 weeks or so before. And this voice said to me, "You need to marry this woman." And I said, "You are insane." And the voice came back and said, "And you need to tell her tonight." After a little while, they finally took me up to a room, and then the doctor came in and he said, "So at a minimum, you have pneumonia in both lungs, and it's really bad. Yeah, we're going to put you in biological isolation. Think hazmat suits and double doors and that kind of stuff." And I'm sitting here thinking, okay, this is serious. And as I relaxed and went inside, I could feel something really weird. It felt like a zipper. And I could feel my body and spirit unzipping, disconnecting. And so I realized I was dying. I felt like in an instant and for a long time, I was traveling in the cosmos. If I hadn't been in some kind of a protective bubble, I would have been incinerated in a heartbeat.
Welcome into another Key David podcast here on Zion Media. I am joined by Trevor the Key Keys, and he's in his car right now, so you're not going to see him until he gets to the office he's going to, and then I'm sure he'll pop in here. And we got the real MacGyver. Listen, there's no David Douglas today. He is busy editing, so he is going to miss this one. And I'm also joined by our guest, Kellen, and I don't want to mess up your last name because it's a tough one. So, Kellen, I'm going to have you say, how do I say your last name?
Flukiger.
Flukiger.
Yeah, there's no
But you know
N, so
what?
it's just Flukiger. Yeah, all kinds of crazy ways to say that.
I love the name The Alchemist. That is literally one of my favorite books. And I love that you have that as a name. So you got the real MacGyver, we got The Alchemist, we've got a whole crew, and we got an amazing show for you all today. I know we get lots of people emailing us and asking us, "Hey, Shane, Trevor, hey guys, we want more NDEs." And so we sent Greg MacGyver out to go find us some NDEs, and I'm honored that Kellen agreed to come on our broadcast. He has his own podcast, he's done 1,000 shows there. He's been on lots of other people's podcasts sharing his story, and I feel honored that he's willing to come on Zion Media and share with us today. So with that, Kellen, I'm going to turn kind of the time over to you, and as we have questions, we'll ask questions, but tell our audience just a little bit about yourself, and then let's get into some of these stories, some of these NDEs, and some of these glorious experiences that you've had.
Well, I will, and thank you. The first thing I want to do is honor you guys, because putting on a show of any size, a podcast or a video show, is a labor of love. And so my gratitude is to you for the effort, the energy, the heart, the love that you have in encouraging people and sharing important things with them. So I'm delighted for who you are and what you're doing, and I want to thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
You're absolutely welcome. It's a labor of love. I have a long and twisted kind of story in life, and I do have a very, very profound NDE to talk about, where I did actually die flatlined in the ICU here in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, which is about, I don't know, 1,000 miles north of where you guys are. But it was set up by some things that happened earlier. And so I'll talk about that because it laid the groundwork for the meaning and understanding of some things that happened later. I was raised in a two-parent home, by all intents and purposes, looked pretty normal from outside. My upbringing was very religiously oriented and strict, and the discipline that accompanied that today would be felony child abuse. So I grew up with a lot of physical and emotional and other kinds of punishments, shall we say, abuse, whatever, that really shaped my life. And it shaped me in the way of just me believing I was not good enough. I'm just not good enough. I never will be. And the only way I'm ever going to be okay is if I get this final sort of stamp of approval on my forehead from my mom, who was principally the administrator of the discipline. And where that left me is when I left home at 17, I sort of believed that that was my mission in life, was to be okay. And of course, I had the desire to, get a job and make a lot of money and everything that everybody has. And I succeeded at that. But because it was underpinned with this conviction that I wasn't good enough, I sort of lived this roller coaster of self sabotage where I would build big success and then burn it down, literally take actions and behaviors that burned things down. And that happened over and over again. And so for the next 35 years, from 17 to age 52, I lived that roller coaster, and I created several high level jobs, successes, C-suite positions, making all kinds of money. And then I would burn them down, take actions that ruined them. And that just sort of went on over and over again. And in the process, I had 3 failed marriages. I was married and divorced 3 times. And I know it takes 2 to tango, but most of my assessment is most of it was my behaviors. And so by the time I was 52, I was single again for the 3rd time. This is now August of 2007. And I had 4 of my 10 children living with me as a single dad. 3 were grown up and married at this point, and 3 were with one of the exes that I had. And it's embarrassing to say that, but I had several. And at the same time, I was back making all kinds of money again, way up on top. I was also a $3,000 a week cocaine addict.
Wow.
And I was making so much money that didn't matter. So I got home on a Friday night. I was going to go out and party for the weekend. And because I was a single dad and worked a lot out of town, mine was the party house. And so all my teenage kids, all 4 of them were teenagers, they had friends over and all kinds of stuff went on there that shouldn't have. But, I was full of my own problems. But anyway, I got home on a Friday night. I was going to go out and party for the weekend. And before I went out, I suddenly had this urge to turn on the television. And that doesn't sound like anything, except I don't watch TV. I still don't much. And so I bought the biggest, coolest stuff you could have, because when you make all that kind of money, that's what you buy, right? And besides that, all these teenagers and their friends and stuff. So I picked up the remote and realized I didn't know how to turn it on. And so I had to ask my daughter, a 16-year-old daughter who was there, and she punched some buttons and, threw the remote at me, dipweed, and left the room. And it landed on a program I'd never heard of, but I hadn't heard of many of them anyway. And the name of the program is a reality TV show called Intervention. And you may or may not know that. And I don't know if it's still on or not. It's 20 years ago, but it's about families who stage professional interventions for busted loved ones.
Interesting.
And yeah. And so the protagonist in this particular episode was a high-ranking executive with a cocaine problem. So I watched, yeah, I watched my life sort of play out for maybe 10 minutes. And I said, yeah, I'm not watching this crap. So I turned it off and went and did some other stuff and got ready to go out. And I just had this internal compulsion. It was compelled to turn the TV back on. So I picked up the remote, and this time I knew how, and I turned it on, and that program started over. And I didn't have a DVR, and I didn't, it wasn't on the schedule. And no, it can't do that. I understand that, but it did. And it freaked me out. So I sat down and I thought, holy crap. So I watched the program. It didn't go well. The guy yelled at his family, swore he didn't have a problem, stomped out of the intervention. So it ended, and it freaked me out just because of what had happened and what was in the program. So instead of going out to party, I went to bed. When I went to bed, I went to hell. And what I mean by that is I went somewhere. It felt out of body. I was in a large room that was like a theater. It was dark, and there was a stage, and I could see on the stage various scenes of my life. Not like life flashing by like they talk about in NDEs, but there were very specific scenes, and every one of them was focused on suffering. The suffering that I had received had been inflicted on me as a kid growing up through the suffering I had inflicted on everybody else as a lousy partner, a drug addict, a pathological liar, and all the rest of the stuff that goes with it. And the experience of watching that was so intense, it was unbearable. Absolutely, absolutely unbearable. And it went on forever. After a long time, I heard a voice over my right shoulder, and it said very clearly, "It is enough." I woke up, and I was disoriented for 3 reasons. One, I was upside down and backwards in bed. Two, the sheets of the bed were soaked, like wring out soaked. So much so that
So you're sweating, profusely sweating.
I assume that, I'm assuming that but it was ridiculous. Like I can't even imagine a body losing that much liquid, but whatever. The third reason I was freaked out is because the sun was shining in the window and the windows faced west. And I got up and realized it was 5 o'clock Saturday afternoon. So I'd been somewhere for just about 18 hours.
Wow.
And I realized, okay, I've been invited to change. I have no idea what to do, where to go, how to do this. I hadn't really done anything before, so I gotten any help or I hadn't done anything significant. And I said to myself, okay, I have no idea what to do, but I know one thing: I'm done. So I threw away about $1,000 worth of drugs I had laying around because I always did, and I quit cold turkey that day. Now that got me sober, but it didn't do anything about how I got there. The mental illness and my own opinions of myself and all the rest. But the divine God wasn't finished. So that was part one. On Monday, I went back to work and I knew I had to change everything, but only so much at a time. One of the things that happened because of the position that I had is I used to get all kinds of free stuff. Um, like free tickets to this concert and, sporting events and box seats to this, that sort of thing. And some of them were pretty expensive, and not bribes, but kind of be nice to Kellen stuff because I made decisions that sometimes affected other companies to the tune of billions of dollars. And so lots of people did that kind of stuff. So one of the things I got was a pair of tickets to see a Yo-Yo Ma concert. And if you know classical music, you know who that is. And if you don't, you don't. But in the classical world, that is, ah! And so I was stoked and I'm like, I'm going. I want to see this show. And I don't want to waste this other ticket because they were like $1,000 tickets each. And I don't have anybody to take. I absolutely don't have anybody to take, but I don't want to waste this ticket. So I asked in the groups that I managed who likes classical music. And a woman in one of the groups said, well, I do. And I asked her, well, have I ever given you anything before? Because I gave stuff away all the time. And she said, no. I said, okay, fine. See you there. So I gave her the ticket. We met at the venue. The concert was amazing, as I knew it would be. And now, as of the date of the concert, I'm now 2.5 weeks stone cold sober.
So you just quit cold turkey. You said you just cut it off right then. No more, done.
Yeah. I threw everything I had away, emptied bags, flushed it out, and I was done. The experience had that profound an effect, and I knew that wasn't enough. Like I was a broken human being, okay? And the drugs were a symptom masking the pain that I experienced from depression, from believing I wasn't good enough, from having lived 35 years of continuous self-sabotage. I remember saying to myself all the time, I would come home from wherever I'd been and I'd say, give me my 3-piece Armani and I can go downtown and I can be anybody you need me to be. But when I get home, I actually have no flipping clue who I am.
Gotcha.
I don't know who I am. And I also remember remarking, I don't feel anything. Like I can do whatever I need to do whatever it is, but I don't feel anything. That's how severe it had gotten over the decades. So we went to the concert and it was amazing. And about halfway through, like I said, I'm now 2.5 weeks stone cold sober. I had a feeling come over me that I recognized from 3 weeks or so before. And this voice said to me, you need to marry this woman. And I said, you are insane. I said, I've screwed that up 3 times. I clearly do not know how to do this. There is no way that's happening. So later that night, we were backstage because there were expensive tickets, backstage passes, tickets to the reception and all that kind of stuff. We're backstage and the voice came back and said, comma, and you need to tell her tonight.
Oh my
And I went crazy. Yeah, I went absolutely nuts. I said, well, there's a few problems with that. Number one, I actually don't know her well enough to know whether or not she's in a relationship. Like I know her, she works in one of my groups, but I I don't even know if she has a relationship. And two, she could have me like arrested for harassment or something, right? So no, we're not doing that. And besides that, it's crazy. And you don't win those arguments. So I did, and it was weird, and it went about like you would have expected. And she said, "Are you insane?" And she left.
Hey, at least you did what you were told to do.
Well, I stumbled through. I mean, it was clumsy, it was awkward, it was scary, and it was insane, but I did it, and she said, "You're insane." I said, "I know," and so she left. The good news was she wasn't in a relationship, which I didn't know, and the other good news is she didn't call the cops or HR or whatever. I mean, I wasn't aggressive or weird, but, so she didn't do anything. Over the next 3 weeks or so, she had her own set of experiences, and about 3 weeks or so after the concert, I walked away from millions of dollars of contracts because I was a contractor, consultant kinda thing. She walked away from her entire career, and we walked off into the sunset together in October, it is now. She moved in with me immediately, and we got married in December, so 5 minutes later. And last December, we celebrated our 17th wedding anniversary. So the reason that's powerful, I mean, the story's nuts, but the important thing is the invitation to get sober was one thing. She was literally the angel that was sent to help me learn how to be a person, how to tell the truth, how to have a friend, how to be a friend. Things that I had never learned despite being married and 3 times and having 10 kids. I didn't know how to do any of those things, and she has been invincible in her stand for me, and I've asked her 100 times. I mean, everybody in the office knew I was a drug addict. They didn't know, but they knew, and, I've asked her, "What possessed you to walk away from this career and do this crazy thing?" And she said, "Well, I just didn't see you that way. I knew I knew it was the right thing to do, and I knew that that isn't who you were." And so that was the start of this whole thing. And we did literally jump off the cliff and build a parachute on the way down kind of stuff. So that was what happened in 2007. And I spent the next 3 years or so getting healthy, talking to counselors and getting different kinds of help to get sane and sober and, that kind of thing. And then as I began to, and then it was not easy. I mean, think about this. What they were was invitations. When the divine knocks on our door, they're always invitations. There seems to be a framework in the construction of the universe that we always have the right to choose. And so the invitation was there, and I decided this time I was going to take it. And it was another funny thing because we hadn't really planned everything, and so a couple of weeks after the concert, we'd been talking about stuff, but she knew me as this high-powered consultant that made boatloads of cash. That's who she knew, and that's all she'd ever known. And one day some stuff happened, and I just resigned, done. And I walked downstairs and into her office and closed the door, and I said, "You may wanna rethink this whole thing, because I don't know what you think you were getting into, but I just quit. And I'm not gonna may not stay in the city. I may not even stay in the country. So you may want to rethink this whole thing." So I was giving her the chance to back out because everything had changed so abruptly, so fast. She took one look at me and said, "I'm in." So that was the beginning of the work to get healthy. And over the years, 2 or 3 years after that, I spent a lot of very intense time doing work. And then what occurred to me is that the work that I was doing and the changes that were occurring for me, both in getting healthy and in learning to deal with life in a completely different way and eliminate old stories from childhood and all the self-sabotaging behaviors and beliefs and fears and all the rest, was that I could be of a lot of help to others because of what I was learning. And I was so excited about it. And that's when I decided that I didn't know how. I thought, well, I could do this and it would be really valuable. So then I decided, I don't know what that is. Maybe that's coaching. So I decided to become a coach and didn't really know anything about it because I hadn't done anything like that, even though I'd been a senior executive in both the United States and Canada. So anyway, I began to do that, and I also began to write, which I'd never done before, books and about my own journey, about the growth and about the opportunity. And here's some things that I know from that. If I look at my life and where I'd been, 3 failed marriages and a drug addict and, just all kinds of crazy stuff. If there was ever a poster child of somebody that should have been left at the bottom of the canyon, I was that. And even in that circumstance, the divine issued an invitation. It was up to me to take it and crawl over whatever broken glass was required to get out. But the invitation was there. And so one of the things that I learned is it doesn't matter where you've been, there's still always an opportunity.
I love that.
So years went by and I built a coaching practice and I wrote a bunch of books. I've written 20 now. I'm working on my 21st and they're all about growth. And, I wrote a book about fear, about forgiveness, about, meditation, or just all kinds of stuff that all had to do with and came out of my own work and journey. And things went along well. I was doing well. The business was growing. I had clients all over the place. Uh, things were going quite well. In 2018, which is now 11 years after that, and maybe 8 years into really developing the coaching practice and writing books, counting, the 3 years of personal work, Joy and I decided to go. Oh, and I didn't tell you, the most fun part about that whole thing is her name is Joy. Like you can't make stuff up. Like you just cannot make this stuff up. So anyway, in 2018, Joy and I decided to go on a cruise, and neither one of us had ever been on a cruise before. I don't know, just hadn't done it. So we did. And it was a cruise of the Baltic Sea, which is over there by Helsinki and, that kind of thing. And so we visited all those cities over there, and it was 10 days. It was fun, and we had a great time, Stockholm and blah, blah, blah. When we got home, and the last day there, I got sick. And I began to get really sick. I had a fever, and that was pre-COVID. So we flew home from Amsterdam on Tuesday. We left Tuesday morning, and we got home Tuesday afternoon because it's a polar flight, and you gain a bunch of hours. So you get home just a few hours after you leave. But anyway, I was just horrifyingly sick, and I thought, well, this is a terrible flu. So I went to bed and thought, I'll stay in bed and whatever. Joy handled rescheduling some coaching clients and whatever. So about Friday, it was getting awful, and I decided I need to go to the doctor. This isn't going to get better. So I went to the walk-in clinic that they have here in Canada, and they wouldn't let me in. The nurse took one look at me and said, "You can't come in here. There's nothing we can do for you. Go right now to the ER." So that was the first scary sign. And so we drove to the ER, and an emergency room, you might be in there an hour, you might be in there room 3 or whatever. It depends on how many people and all that kind of stuff. After we got in there, in 10 minutes, I was in a private room. And I'd never even heard of such a thing. I didn't even know they had private rooms in the ER. The only thing I'd ever seen is those curtains, that separate the little beds, right? No, I'm in a private room with a door. And in 10 more minutes, the doctor's in there asking me all kinds of questions. And they're trying to figure out what's going on and taking things. They sent me to get some x-rays, and they sent me to get an MRI and all this stuff. And it was not looking good. So there was no question about admitting me to the hospital. I was just now waiting for a place to be put. So I sent Joy home because we had cats and dogs and that kind of thing. I said, come back. It's now Friday, going on Friday night. And I said, come back in the morning and we'll see what's going on. After a little while, they finally took me up to a room, and I was a private room, which was weird. Okay. And then the doctor came in and he said, so at a minimum, you have pneumonia in both lungs, and it's really bad. And besides that, there's something else, and we don't know what it is yet. Okay. So then they came back after a while and said, yeah, we're going to probably have to move you to the ICU. I said, okay. And they came back after a while and said, yeah, we're going to put you in biological isolation. Think hazmat suits and double doors and that kind of
Wow.
stuff. And I'm sitting here thinking, okay, this is serious. And then they came back and said, asked the question you never want to hear. And they said, do we have permission to intubate you and do anything we need to do to preserve your life? What?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And so then after he left, I decided I was going to go into meditation because I was quite skilled at that. And so I did. And as I relaxed and went inside, I could feel something really weird. It felt like a zipper. And I could feel my body and spirit unzipping, disconnecting. And so I realized I was dying. And so I picked up the phone. I was going to send Joy a text. And by this time I was trembling so badly I could hardly operate it because my body was shutting down. I was literally crashing. So I sent her a text that had 3 lines on it. One line said, ICU. The second line said isolation/intubation. And the third line said, I may be dying. And she didn't see that because she was asleep. And somewhere right after that, I crashed,
Wow.
I coded. So, and flatlined. So Joy didn't see that. She got a call, I found out later, about 2:30 in the morning from the nurse. And the nurse said, are you coming? And she's like, what? And then she saw my text, right? So that's what happened to start with. That's what was externally. And so then the death experience happened right. The first of it happened right then. Uh, I actually don't know where I was when I coded. I don't know if they'd already moved me to the ICU or if I was in the room still. I don't know, but I flatlined and I came to spiritually. I sat up because I was laying down, obviously, and the room had changed. I wasn't seeing a room full of tubes and doctors. It was sort of a gray-ish room, kind of like a little bit misty, the color of like photo card gray, kind of that soft gray. And over my shoulder, I could see a doorway over there. And for some reason, I wanted to be at the door. And so suddenly I'm standing at the door and there wasn't a door in it, but it was just a doorway. And I'm leaning on the door jamb with my right shoulder. And I noticed on the other side of the door, my side was gray and the other side was white. And there was no light streaming through, but it was just white on that side and gray on my side. And then as I looked through the door, I realized there was someone standing on the other side, leaning on that door jamb. So right there, that close. And I looked at him and he looked at me and he said, do you want to come home? And in the way that you only know things in that realm, I knew immediately what the door was, who I was talking to, what the question meant, and what was going on. And it was interesting because there was no expectation about what the answer needed to be, but there was going to be an answer. You just know that this question needs an answer. It doesn't matter
Right.
what it is, but you have to decide. So we talked about it a while. I talked about everything that had happened since 2007 and what we'd built and what we were planning to do and everything else. And after we talked for a while, I said, oh, I'm not done. And he said, okay. And I'm quite certain that's when they were able to restart my heart. Um, and that was the end of the first conversation. The second conversation took place the next day. And often people ask, how did you know it was the next day? I don't know. It was the next day. And so we're back at the door, exactly the same as the previous day. And the topic of the previous day didn't come up. It was settled. You're staying. So what are you going to do? Okay, you're staying. So what's to do what? Said you weren't done. And so we talked about my coaching work and the work that I was trying to do to add good to the world and help people understand their capability and possibility, much in the same way I had learned the hard way about, what I was capable of and what I wanted to do as opposed to what I had been doing years before. And after we talked for a while about that and about everything that I had done, I had this experience suddenly. And if you or your audience members have seen, there's a movie that came out in the 90s, I think, that has Jodie Foster in it, and it's a movie called Contact.
Yes.
And it's about aliens. They build this ship, and they beam down some info, and we build a ship, whatever. So the experience I had, it was like that. I felt like in an instant and for a long time, I was traveling in the cosmos and could see infinity and all kinds of unspeakable description stuff, just was treated, as it were, to this thing. And I felt like two things. One, I was being fed with a fire hose. And two, that if I hadn't been in some kind of a protective bubble, I would have been incinerated in a heartbeat. And so that went on for what felt like a long, long time. Obviously, in that circumstance, you don't know, but it felt like a long time. So after seeing that display of glory and infinity, we're back at the door, and I'm kind of breathless with that. And I realized that thinking through that four things had become crystal clear to me. And number one is that each of us is an intentional, lovingly crafted divine creation, period. No mistakes, no accidents, intentional crafting with love. The second thing was that each of us have a mission, a purpose that we not only agreed to before we came, but we were stoked about. And number three, that we were each given the gifts and talents that we need to both enjoy and complete that commitment. And number four is that all the help we need is available from both sides of that door. And so in thinking about those, I ask, well, since that's true, why do we settle for crumbs? And I don't know if in the
It's a great
economy of,
question. That's a great question, by the way.
well, I just said, like, why? Okay, why do we settle for crumbs? And I don't know if in the economy of heaven, brevity is a virtue, but the answer was four words. He looked at me and he said, because you don't believe.
Amen.
And I'm like, I didn't facepalm. I thought about it. But okay. I'm like, okay, what can I do? What can I do about that? How can I? Oh, glad you asked. So then what came was a framework about how to change these deep beliefs that I had and that everybody has, that are so deep they're woven into our DNA, about lack of worth and value and capability and all this crap that we all have woven in, seems like our base operating system. And there was an entire framework given about how to do that. And when I wrote the books, I wrote one book about this experience, and I wrote a companion book about that framework called the Book of Context. And the reason I titled it that is because we live in a self-created context straitjacket that's constrained by what we believe is possible. And the truth is, it's of
Right.
our own making, and it's transparent and flexible. Like, we don't need to have it, but we do. So I called it the Book of Context. It was funny because when I wrote that book, I had a client who is a retired internal medicine physician write the foreword, and he loved the book and wrote a nice foreword, and he spent a half an hour trying to convince me to change the title. And he said, if you'd written the Book of Love or something, we'd understand it, but the Book of Context? And I waited till he was all done, and I said to him, Mort, the name is not negotiable. And he's like, oh, okay. So, and because of how it came. So anyway, that was the end of the second conversation, and that was by far the longest. The third conversation took place again the next day, and we're back at the door. And this time I felt like I was really excited. I was bouncing up and down, kind of like somebody sitting on one of those bouncy balls on a desk. I was reciting everything I'd learned and all the frameworks, and just in my own mind back and forth. And so then we're back at the door, and it was just one question. He looked at me and he said, "Are you sure?" And I felt a little bit like I'd been punched in the stomach. I'm like, "What do you mean?" Am I sure? Am I stupid? Am I missing something? Am I biting off more than I can chew? Like, what? Am I sure? It's kind of how it felt, right? So we talked about all those questions from every angle that I could think of. And finally I said, yeah, I'm sure. So he said, okay. And nothing was said, but the conversation ended with a finality that I knew we were done. And so that was the end. And then so if that's 3 days, some 14 days later, I was in a coma for 17 days. So some 14 days later, I came out of the coma and began a long, long road to recovery. During that time, I'd lost 35 pounds. Both my lungs had been completely trashed. What I ended up having was necrotizing MRSA, which is a superbug in both my lungs and the
Wow.
bloodstream. And the head of the infectious disease
Did
department.
they say how that happened?
No, in fact, that was one of the things. It's a very difficult thing to get because that bacteria is difficult to get inside of you. Usually has to come in through some kind of damage or cut. And so we spent a lot of time trying to figure that out, and we never did. And the infectious disease department head told me that the 10-day kill rate of what I had was 100%.
Wow.
And so I hadn't even gotten to the hospital till the end of day 5. And they didn't even know what I had till the end of day 8. So he said, well, of course you died. Like, you couldn't not die. So that's the experience itself. And I, like I said, I couldn't walk and I couldn't do anything when I came to. Like everything was atrophied. I looked like a survivor from a concentration camp. But gradually I was able to, learn to walk again and do everything. And they told me when I left, my lungs might never come back. I asked them, will I ever get my lungs back? And they said, yeah, 2 years to never. And we're now 6 years on, and I don't anywhere near have the kind of capacity, aerobic capacity, lung capacity I used to have. But I'm here, and I'm here by choice. And the outcome of that was I wrote a couple books, and it also has shaped everything. Those things that I learned in the way that you learn things there, I know. And I know that not only about me, but every person that I meet. And so when I look at you, I know who you are in terms of your heritage. I won't pretend to know everybody's purpose and mission, but that you have one, and that we all face the fear of not good enough. And what if I do it? And I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And I don't know what my purpose is. That's all standard and normal questions. And there are ways to get those answers and to live. The name of my podcast is Your Ultimate Life. And that's how I feel now. I live every day in a life of purpose, prosperity, and joy by serving with the divine gifts and talents that I have and my life experience, which includes these 2 extraordinary events. And there's another one later, but includes those 2 extraordinary events. So I'm going to catch your breath and
Well,
you can ask
yeah,
some
let me
questions.
ask a couple of questions. After the 2018 event, when you said, "Hey, I'm choosing to stay," you talk about writing these different books. What was your mission and your goal? And what advice would you give for the people watching this that maybe they're suffering from anxiety, depression, lack of self-confidence, and all of these different things that we as human beings uh, fight with? What would be some of the things that you would say to our audience, like, you need to be doing this to overcome these things?
There's several. And the first one is what I said before, and that is, I don't care where you've been or what's happened before. It's never too late. So don't write yourself off, don't give up, and don't pretend like there's no way. That's baloney. So don't do that. Start from that place. There is a way. There is a way. You may not know what it is. You may not be able to see it. You may not know where it goes or how much broken glass you got to crawl over. I don't care. I felt like that in 2007. I just slammed my fist metaphorically and said, I'm going. I don't know where the hell this path goes. I'm going. And so that's thing number one. If you're struggling right now, it's never too late. It doesn't matter. I didn't even start this transformation until I was 52. So It's never too late. And yes, there's a way. So that would be thing number one.
So there's always hope.
100%. One, as long as you're breathing air, there's opportunity, period. End of story.
Love it. Okay, number
What
2.
I Yeah, what I didn't tell you was that divine intervention in August of 2007 came 2 weeks after my second suicide attempt. So I'd attempted suicide 2 weeks before that time, for the second time, and was not allowed to be successfully leave. And then that 2 weeks later, that story that I told you first happened. But anyway, the second thing is do whatever it takes to learn to love yourself. Care about yourself, care for yourself. We have this story that if we do stuff for other people, and I love them and I hate me, that's okay. That's not okay. And you can't love anybody else more than you love yourself. I don't care what motions you're going through, and
I
I
love
don't
this.
care what you're pretending. You're not telling the truth. You must, first and foremost, loving yourself freely, furiously, fearlessly, even if you have mistakes and failures and whatever, is foundational. It is essential. And it is the first step in growth, period.
Totally. I think we forget that, Jesus says there's 2 great commandments. Love God and love your neighbor as thyself. And I say maybe there's 3. Maybe there's loving God, loving your neighbor, and maybe the last one might be the most important one, and that is loving yourself. So thank you for bringing that up.
Well, it's implied. Love your neighbor as yourself doesn't even mean anything if you hate yourself. So, loving yourself is honoring your creator. Let's get that clear. We were not created to hate the creations. So honoring yourself might be the ultimate spirituality. And
Yeah.
here really clearly, I'm not talking about senseless self-indulgence and all that crap. Believe me, I've been there. So that isn't what I mean. I'm talking about honoring the being that you are and loving yourself enough to
Right.
care for yourself in the way, whatever way you need. Everybody's different and our needs are different. But that's step 2. So there's always a way, and love yourself. The next thing that I would say, number 3, is get the help you need. One of my largest mistakes was waiting until I was 52 to discard the idea that I had been imprinted with, that you're just supposed to suck this up and do it yourself. If you could just, come on, get your shit together, you could handle this. That is not true. It never was true, and it never will be true. So my change to agree with myself and then to go, my first 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 shrinks, I ruined them because I didn't even know how to be vulnerable and talk. I lied to them. I told them stories. I gave them both the diagnosis and the answer. It took 6 months of seeing a bunch of different people before I could even tell the truth and then shut up and just allow myself to be broken and then listen to what somebody might have to say and see. And so number 3 is get the help you need. And if it isn't the right one, go somewhere else. Do it again. Keep going, because the goal isn't to tick a box that said, I talked to somebody. The goal is, am I making progress? Is it better? Am I getting through the days and weeks more effectively, more powerfully, with less fear, less procrastination, less self-sabotage, less whatever the problem du jour is? That's the measure of anything.
Love it.
Okay, so there's 3. Do you want some more?
Hey, we'd love more. If you have more, because I
I
feel
have
like and I teach this. I'm like, I wrote a book called The Honest Lie. And honest lie is something that's not true about you today, but you want to be true about you in the future. And they are I am statements. Napoleon Hill made him famous when he called them autosuggestion. And
mm,
I tell people, I am is another name for God. So if you're saying I am something negative, I am dumb, I am stupid, I am fat, whatever it is, maybe you're taking the name of God in vain. And so I am statements are really important. Talk to us about positive or just self-talk. Is that anything that I see you have it, dream, build, write it. What does that mean?
Dreambuildwrite.com is a website to a book challenge that I happen to be hosting this week. Today is the second day of 5, and I've got a room full of people, 40 or 50 people I'm talking to about writing books, those that feel called to about their own life story and journey and transformations and things. And so it's something I help people do because after I'd written 7 or 8, I realized I had a really good system. And so I wrote a book about how to write books called The Story Arc. And so now I conduct workshops in helping people both identify and tell their stories in book form and then create products or services or whatever, workshops, keynotes
Gotcha.
from that set of experiences. So that just happens to be on the screen the last 3 or 4 weeks because it was leading up to the thing that started yesterday.
Just lost him. You there, Kellen?
I'm still here. Trevor came on full thing, and I thought he was going to say something, so I was being quiet.
No.
All
Okay.
good.
Well, it just the whole system just kind of glitched. All
Okay, it's all good. Anyway, so yeah, after getting the help you need, loving yourself and getting the help you need, the next thing is look, understand it's going to be a journey. We live in a world where we think everything's got to be download and double click. Everything's got to be yesterday. Every problem's got to be solved in the length of a TV sitcom. Nothing works like that. Trees don't grow like that. The world wasn't created like that. Kids don't grow like that. It takes some time, and it took some months or years for each of us to become, or even decades to become where we are with the negative talk and the beliefs and negative stuff that we have. Even an intentional, focused effort is going to take some time, and that's okay. The direction is more important than either where you are at the moment or the speed. And if you
Gotcha.
change direction and start moving, hey, you're doing good. So 1%, if you make a 1% improvement in something, in 3 months, that's 100% almost.
Right, right,
So
right. That's a good way to look at it. And sometimes we get a little anxious thinking we got to do it all right now, and then we get frustrated when it all doesn't work out right away. So it's kind of this concept of line upon line, precept on precept, here a little, there a little, and we just make these incremental changes in our life that end up being monumental.
And that goes right to the thing you said, which I also talk a lot about, which is our self talk. So if you are thinking that you're going to love yourself and you are loving yourself and you're working on that or you're doing it, I would ask the following question. If I were privy to every single thought and piece of conversation that you have in your private moments and every behavior that you did, would I be looking at a person about whom I would say, wow, that person really loves themselves? Or would I think, oh, craps, good thing that's not transcribed? Like measure this because your thoughts and your words create your reality.
Mm.
We literally create our existence. We
Your
want to
thoughts and your
blame.
words create your reality. So if that is true, then we should be monitoring our thoughts and our words.
Well, we should be creating good stuff on purpose. Like, why would I waste any thought or language energy on hatred, negativity, anger at myself, anger at others? Because those things have energy.
Right.
When it says in some, scriptures, the word of God has power, that doesn't mean because God has power, words have power. And I'll tell you how you know that. There are some people you can talk to, and when they talk, you feel something is wrong. Something is
Yes.
not true. It is not right. There are other people who speak softly and without dancing or singing, and truth. Truth carries its own power.
Right.
And so, it, like, make conscious choices about what you're creating with your thinking and your language.
Gotcha. Okay, I have another question kind of going back into the near death experience that you had.
Mhm.
Um, were you would you call yourself kind of a man of God, a churchgoer, a believer, before and I know you've gone through a transformation, but how help me understand how this impacted your relationship with your creator by having this experience.
So I was raised in a religious home that was enforced with brutality. That sometimes can make people hate religion, hate God, and everything else. It didn't me. I had a sense and knew that there was something there. I just believed that I sucked and that I was a failure in the context of that. Not that there wasn't there, but that I sucked. So I that was one of the core beliefs that I had to um, understand that I believed that and then change. So I never didn't believe in greater powers, higher power, God. I didn't not believe. I did believe. I knew there was something there. I thought I don't measure up. I suck. I can't have that. Whatever it is, I can't have it. So what happened? Something about that experience that I didn't mention because I knew I made all these mistakes. I'm a drug addict. Did different times over and over again. 3 failed marriages, a useless this, that, and the other. The thought of being in the presence of the creator was horrifying. I thought, I that's just the most horrible. I can't even imagine such a horrible thing to be there because, I'm dead. What I noticed, and I didn't think about it until afterwards, about the three conversations that I had, was the complete absence, the absolute absence of any of that kind of feeling. There wasn't any sense of, "It's okay, Johnny," none of that crap, but there was peace, there was invitation, and there was opportunity. There was not one molecule of the negativity that I had feared, and I was so caught up in the not the complexity, but the completeness of the whole thing that I didn't even notice that until afterwards, and as I thought about it afterwards, I thought, "Holy crap, there was none of the things that I had been so terrified of because I was such a piece of crap. None of that was there. It was invitation and opportunity. Now, to be clear, none of the invitations did any of the work. There was no magic wand fixing, but there was invitation and there was opportunity and there was a lack of the feeling of judgment.
Interesting. And so there was also this agency, like you were offered, hey, it's up to you. Kind of up to you what you want to do here. And so you had this agency. Now, talk to me a little bit. I'm curious about this door. Um, because some people will say, "Oh, I saw a light." I mean, lots of things, but I love your story because you talk about this door, and a door is kind of like a gateway somewhere, going somewhere else. But talk to me maybe as you've pondered this, the significance of that door.
Well, I knew it was the entrance to afterwards. I mean, like, I'm here, my side was gray and a little foggy, and the other side was white. I couldn't see very far in it. I could see the person I was talking to, and I could see that it was clearly a door frame. And
And
to me,
did you know the person you were talking to? Did they seem familiar to you?
not that I would know their name, and people ask me often, my conversations were with God. There isn't any question about that. And people ask, how did you know that? And the answer is the way you know anything there. Like he didn't have a badge on that said, hello, my name is God. But you simply know what's going on there. Like I knew what the questions meant and I knew what the door was. And there
Gotcha.
wasn't any doubt or question. You just know.
Okay. That makes
So
that makes a lot of sense to me.
I'm there, I'm having a conversation. I know what the door is. I was a little bewildered at first, and when he said, "Do you want to come home?" Like, in a billionth of a second, everything was crystal clear
Gotcha.
about what was going on, where I was, what the choice was, that there was no expectation, you can stay, you can go, and that you're going to answer this question, right? That
Gotcha.
that wasn't said, but you knew that. This question is going to be answered. And so I talked we like I said, we talked about it, and then I said, "I'm not done yet." And,
Gotcha.
So I don't know about the significance of the door any more than it was the door, it was the portal, it was the entryway, it represented the choice, the decision to step across that threshold was the choice that was mine. And there was no anything either way. You can do it, you cannot do it. And in talking about it, I just decided I'm not done yet. I am not done yet. And so then I was blessed with the next two conversations, which to me gave me perspective and feeling and learning and certainty about things so that I don't do anything else. My goal this year is to reach 300 million people with a message of their own divinity, capability, and possibility. The ability we have to create our very lives, our existence, what we experience and what we have. And the method, I have 3 M's: message, method, mastery. The message is that. The method is all the tools and things that I have written and have to help people if they want it. And mastery is the few who are willing to do the hard work and want my help to do that. And then they talk about becoming some kind of client or whatever. So I'm reaching 300 million people. I don't do anything else. I don't go look for anything. I don't prospect. I don't do anything. My business plan is really simple. I never look for clients. I look for people to love, opportunities to serve, and problems to solve. And in that context, everything is what it is. And I do that first breath to last every day because that's who I have chosen to be, period.
And so what is the best way for people to find you? If they're gonna find you on YouTube, what's the best way for them to find you on YouTube? And where would you direct people to go if this message is hitting them and they're saying, "Hey, I need to reach out to him. I need to see what he's doing. The Spirit's prompting me to do it." What's the best way for our audience to get in contact with your team?
So there's a URL on the screen, kellenflukigermedia.com. That is a page that has a contact form on it. There's books, and I also am a musician. I've got some 91 songs in commercial release and a bunch of other stuff that we didn't talk about. But there's a contact form on there. With a name like Kellen Flukiger, you can't hide. So I'm really easy to find on socials. The only other Kellen Flukiger in the world is my son, who's about 40 ish. And so the podcast is called Your Ultimate Life. I have an LA Talk radio show once a week that's live Tuesday afternoons. It's called Your Ultimate Life also. The YouTube channel is Ultimate Life Formula, which is just, I think I have 1,000 videos now up about these topics and about how to do stuff. If you want to talk to me, use the contact form and reach out on social. Uh, I'm not hard to find, and in fact, I can't hide. You do have to spell my name right, but other than that, I can't hide.
Gotcha. Well, Kellen, thank you so much. Oh, go ahead, Greg.
I
you
have
have a
one question.
Yeah.
Your first experience going cold turkey and meeting Joy, and then your 2018 experience. How did both of those affect your children and your relationship with your children?
My relationship with my children is a disaster because I've had, and I'll say that, but I'm completely at peace with 3 divorces and 4 of them living with me, knowing I was a ridiculous drug addict and stuff. My 3rd ex-wife did everything she could to ruin my life and alienate kids, and she's an attorney, and so she did a great job. And she also had a lot of money to do that sort of thing. So many of my 10 kids don't talk to me, and I have that struggle and that guilt. Uh, this might be worth it. Can I have another couple minutes?
Yeah, take it. Yeah, take it.
So one of the things that was the most destructive for me was the guilt that I felt because of everything I'd done wrong. When you have a sense of right and wrong and you think you suck, the thing that drove me to suicide a couple times was finally looking in the mirror and believing that everything that was wrong was my fault. Everything that everybody has said about me is true. It is all my fault. There is no more excuse. There's no more deflection. There is nothing. And that feeling has no description. You can't describe what that feels like. And so I gave it a name. And the name of that feeling for me is called the name of the black. And at that place is when you start to believe you should be done. You should get rid of yourself. And the thing that drove me there most of all is the guilt about failing my partners that I'd had, being a liar, failing my kids, being everything that everybody said. And so one of the worst things for me was to have the idea that there could ever be forgiveness, that somehow I could be okay with myself. And one of the books that I wrote, every one of them has come from my journey, is a book called Forgiveness, A Journey of Courage to a Place of Freedom and Power. And teaching about forgiveness and why it matters and what it does require and what it doesn't require, and how carrying around excess baggage is, whether you hate yourself or whether you hate someone else or you're waiting for retribution or whatever, is doing nothing except preventing your light from shining today. And so forgiveness is a process of no longer allowing events from the past to have power in the present.
Oh, I love that. Say that one more time. That was really powerful.
Forgiveness is a choice, and it is the act of no longer allowing events from the past to have power in the present.
Love
So
that.
the two examples is if somebody did bad things to me, and okay, they did, and I carry baggage and think there should be some certain kind of justice or retribution or whatever. Number one, that's not my responsibility. Two, I'm not called to do it or administer it. It's not my problem. And me carrying that around doesn't do anything except fill me with anger, revenge, hate, resentment, and a bunch of stuff, all of which reduces my ability.
Right.
And so when I get rid of that and forgive them completely and fully, whether they ask for it or not, whether they deserve it or not, it's got nothing to do with it. I choose to no longer allow those events from the past to have power in the present because I said so, not because they did or didn't do anything. I don't care. I don't need to care. Now, the other thing is if you've made mistakes, and this was the hardest one for me because I had made so many, poster child to be left at the bottom of the canyon. I thought nothing ever can make up for all the mistakes and lying and pain and everything. And one day I was out for a 3:30 in the morning walk, and I, because of things that have happened, I had the ability to be connected immediately and at all times with spirit. And I was walking around, and my first wife, Image, she's now passed away. She died of breast cancer 5 or 6 years ago. I was thinking of her and thinking about the circumstances of us getting together and our marriage and relationship and how I had behaved. And I was just struck with agony. I thought, she didn't deserve any of the things that I inflicted on her. How can I ever do anything that could even begin to make up for anything? And that thought just sat there like a hot iron in my mind. And the voice, and this was before, it was after 2007, but before 2018, the voice came in my mind and said very clearly, "You can't." And I almost collapsed on the sidewalk, comma, "But I can,"
Mhm.
period. And the effect was so profound that I lost strength. I sat down on a bench so fast I was going to collapse. And the profundity of that truth. We can't, most of the things that we would agonize most over, we can't fix anyway. And so if you want to change, do what you can, change who you are, and add good to the world. That's it. Do what you can do, change who you are, and add good to the world. And in that context, as I had agonized over the fact that, not all of them, but several of my children are estranged, and I don't know what else to do and can't do any more than just wait patiently and love them. I carry no emotion around that. And because I've done the work that I've done and the work that I'm now doing and everything else, there have been many times when, as I have thought about that and my desire to do something different, that the clear voice has come over and over again, 5 simple words. And it is simply this: there will come a day. Done. And that truth has lifted everything from my heart. I don't have to do anything. I can't. And there will come a day. And so with that, I am able to be who I am.
I'm glad we stayed longer. That was awesome.
That was awesome. That was
That was
awesome.
awesome.
Thanks for sharing your heart, man. Like, that's one thing as I did the research on Kellen, is like your authenticity is like a superpower. And that's why I think I'm so drawn to kind of you, your message, and what your mission to help 300 million people. Like that's awesome. And I believe all things are possible. I'm the guy that believes I can fly. I just haven't figured it out yet. If you catch me running down the street, it's because I'm trying to fly and I just haven't figured it out yet. So, Kellen, thank you so much. Greg, Trevor, any final thoughts as we wrap up?
No, I'm sorry I didn't talk much. I'm inside Harmon's grocery store, so I just kind of was like on mute.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, Kellen, thank you so much for taking the time with us here on Zion Media. We're a small show. I know you've been on much bigger shows, and for you to take the time to speak to our audience means a lot to me. And I'm sure there's going to be people reaching out to you because I know your message is going to have an impact on their life. Greg, thank you for finding Kellen and reaching out to him and setting this up. So this was awesome. I guess I'll just echo what Kellen has said. We need to figure out how to love ourselves. And one of the things that really stuck out to me in his NDE is it's not like he showed up there and he felt like he was being judged. There was peace and there was love, and he just knew. And I love that Kellen said, "I'm not done yet." And it is evident by the work that he is doing right now that he is not done yet. And he is preparing people for something greater that is coming. They say the dawn is, or it's always darkest before the dawn or something like that. If you're in that spot of darkness, just know there is light on the horizon. I can feel it. I can sense it. I can see it. I feel like there's been a massive shift in the energy of the world that we're living in right now. And I am excited, not just excited, I am ecstatic about the future and what the future holds. And Kellen is speaking my language. I love positive mindset stuff. Like I said, I wrote a book. Kellen, you don't know this about me, but I spent 5 years in prison. I used to be a super, super rich guy, lost everything, went to prison on securities fraud. So I know what it's like to be at the highs of the highs and experience some of the lows of the lows. So I appreciate you being authentic and sharing your heart and your story and not being embarrassed. And I think that's my other takeaway here. I think sometimes we have a tendency to be like, oh yeah, everything is going so well. And when you ask Kellen, how's your relationship with your kids? He tells it like it is. And I think the more authentic we can be, the closer we get to our own truth. So thank you, Kellen, for coming on. For myself, I'm Shane Baldwin. For the real MacGyver, Gregory MacGyver, and Trevor the Key Keys, thank you for tuning in. Listen, it's really simple. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up. Give us one of these. If you felt like this video needs to be shared, then I would tell you, follow that prompting. Hit the share button, copy paste, costs you no money. This is a great service. Something, if you want to serve today, share this message. I promise you, if you tune in and ask who needs to hear this message, you'll be prompted on knowing who to share it to. And there's something in here that Kellen talked about that potentially could not just save somebody's life or change somebody's life, may even save their life. So thank you again, Kellen, for being our guest. And we'll see you guys all next time.
The light is breaking, the promise near, the hearts of fathers and children drawn near. This is the day we've waited for. The chains of time will bind no more. Fathers and children, hand in hand, forever sealed His perfect plan. In His house the work is done, through the Father, through the Son. What's bound on earth is bound above, united by eternal love. The living and the dead were called to be one. Through mercy and grace the work has begun. This is the promise, the story unfolds. Love eternal, more precious than gold. Link forever, hearts align. Through his power, through his design. Chains are broken, love is near. Eternal light is shining here. Link forever, the work is done. Through the Father, through the Son. A voice of mercy, a voice of grace, forever sealed in his embrace. The veil is thin, the time is now. Through faith and love, we take the vow. Saviors for those who came before. Through us they'll find the open door. It's more than baptisms, it's life anew. Walking uprightly in all we do. The living and dead, we rise as one. Through his glory, his will is done. Arm in arm, we're bound in time. Through Christ's love, the stars align. The living and dead, we're never apart. Eternal hope, a sacred heart. This is the voice of mercy and truth. A light eternal, a life renewed. Forever sealed, forever whole. Through his power, he claims our souls. Living forever, hearts align. Through his power, through his design. Chains are broken, love is near. Eternal light is shining here. Live forever, the work is done. Through the Father, through the Son. A voice of mercy, a voice of grace, forever sealed in his embrace. Through love and light, the promise is clear. We're linked forever, he's always near.